Welcome to another edition of DxTx Partners Podcast. Joining us today, very, very interesting physician, Dr. Robert Bobby Moghim, who is a founding member of Colorado Pain Care in Denver, Colorado, as well as the founder of Anchor Healthcare, which is a very unique AI company that Bobby's very excited about and that we're going to talk about today. But I've gotten the chance to know Bobby over the last 2 or 3 years. Very, very interesting background, interesting path to pain management and being an entrepreneur, former Division I soccer player at Duke, which is very, very impressive. But Dr. Bobby Moghim, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike. I really appreciate, podcasts are really excellent platforms to really have a conversation, a dialogue going back and forth, which I find very valuable. I mean, I listen to podcasts pretty much daily. We get a lot of my information. So I think it's a smart and wise move that DxTx is deploying these podcasts. That way, people from the outside and even inside the organization can really get to know these individuals, what DxTx is up to, and all the fascinating providers and employees that are working under one mission and one cause. So appreciate you having me, and I would love to explore, various questions and pathways. And there's so much to talk about, especially with healthcare and especially interventional pain as well. There is,
and appreciate that. So had a lot of interesting people that have joined us, and you definitely being one of them. Your whole path of becoming a physician, getting into interventional pain management, and then becoming a national thought leader and trainer and speaker in the pain space and being an entrepreneur, I think it's very interesting. Can you kind of walk us through your path to where we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a while back, we're talking medical school time. This is 1990s. I graduated medical school at 2000. I realized that, the physician skill set is very challenging, very difficult, obviously, understanding your own trade and understanding how to diagnose patients and also treat them. That's one whole category it's very, very important, and I don't want to diminish it. But what I thought was that wasn't enough. And I thought that physicians needed diversified skill sets. Just putting us into a box and saying you just need to, hone in on specific ways of learning, and that's it, to me, did not make any sense, because healthcare is just more than treating patients. You have to understand the dynamics of all the moving parts. And so early on, I recognized that. And so that made me very curious. I started reading books that were non-medical, business books, entrepreneurial books. I started trying to really learn how the finances work within healthcare, because a lot of times, if you understand the finances, you understand a lot of the incentives. Then understanding the way hospitals and physicians work, and then all the layers in between. And the layers in between are some of the debatable layers that have gotten us, I think, a little bit off track over the last 20 years or 30 years, kind of the trajectory of medicine. And so in order to play within this arena, I thought it was very valuable that these skill sets are important. You need more than just your physician skill sets. You need to understand income statements, balance sheets, the way even medical device companies work, with the way pharmaceutical companies work. And the more you understand, the more connections you can make. The more connections you can make, the better it is when you're building teams and trying to accomplish, these big goals. And for me, my biggest goal was driving healthcare at scale versus at an individual base. So first, you learn how to treat a patient on an individual basis. And then from there is, can I bring in other skill sets, leadership skills, to build platforms and initiatives that can benefit larger numbers of people. And so we did that with Onyx Healthcare. That was the first company I started. So that was really focused on rural access to healthcare, placing temporary physicians and connecting them to areas that are very difficult to staff. And so that was back in 2004, 2005 when we started that. And so that got me into understanding team building, sales roles, really the dynamics in healthcare, what really moves the needle in terms of, driving physician workforce. And so I became an expert in the physician workforce dynamics. Why is there physician shortages in certain areas? Why do we have these huge gaps in rural areas? Even today, 100 million people live in those blind spots where there's no access to healthcare.
When you were putting Onyx together, were you also practicing as a full-time physician at the time, or were you running this large, locum type company?
Yeah, good question. No, I did both at the same time, believe it or not. So another skill I learned early on in college, being a college athlete, is being able to balance multiple priorities. And so that skill set was learned very early on, especially at a competitive place like Duke, where we were trying to win national championships every year. So it was very heated, very tough practices, and also maintaining your grades. And that balancing act really, it helped me. I had a lot of trials and tribulations in college because of that, learning how to manage both of those. So getting out, that's what I did. I was able to manage both. But that led me into leadership, the leadership skills that you need, right? To offload various things that you need to offload in order to move on to other priorities. And so that was learned very early on. Right out of residency, I was learning that stuff. Forced it actually.
Were you doing anesthesia or were you doing pain management at that time?
I was doing both anesthesia and pain. Yeah. So I had contracts with anesthesia, hospitals that needed anesthesia services. So we started out in Northern California, and I built that team. And at the same time, that's where I found the need for temporary placement, because people were hitting us up for physicians. And then that led to the national organization, Onyx Healthcare.
Very cool. I didn't realize that was that long ago that you started that. So that went on quite a while, that company, huh?
Yeah, we sold in 2019 to healthcare. So pretty large organization, a great one. Onyx is still thriving under them. So real proud of what we were able to build. A lot of the stuff that I learned on the business side of healthcare came from building Onyx.
When did you move from kind of the hybrid anesthesia pain model to full-time pain physician?
Absolutely. So I found a need in Colorado. So Colorado is really more or less my home state. I'm from Tennessee originally, but we found a need in Colorado for interventional pain, specifically in the Denver metro area. So I came up with the idea, we built a team, we formed Colorado Pain Care. And our goal, and this might be a good transition point, was to transition, get patients, this is a whole opioid crisis was going on at that point. A lot of talk about medication management. That gave us that opportunity to say, hey, can we move into a space, modernize access with more medication sparing interventions, such as permanent type therapies, to get patients off of opioids, not necessarily put them on them. Now you have the dependency problems and all that come with the opioids. And then also the states, they have this heavy pressure to regulate as well, which luckily I served under two governors in the Colorado Medical Board. So I learned a lot about how a lot of those policies, impacted patient care and access to care and therapy.
You've been on the forefront of sort of that shift towards interventional pain. I'm wondering if you could talk about kind of where we're at, because this is kind of happening pretty fast. 2019, that wasn't that long ago. And kind of how you view the progression over the last few years, and where do you see it going as far as with the interventional pain physicians focusing more on the advanced procedures, being very interventional, surgical, versus the traditional bread and butter type of procedure?
Yeah, I go back to supply and demand. Here you have patients that are really demanding it, actually. What's happened over the many years is there's been just this huge gap. You have patients that are in need of chronic pain management that have mostly been led in the arena of medications. That led to major, major problems along the way, state, federally, and then also in questioning how we're managing these patients, which really forced us to kind of move into the arena of minimally invasive interventions that are more permanent. So the key words are really medication sparing. How do we move from medication prominent to medication sparing therapies? And, anytime you make a dramatic shift from one thing to another, it takes time. There's a lot of debate. There's various specialties now that get involved, like who's going to do this new intervention. So that creates a whole nother dynamic. But again, I get back to the original point. It was forced upon us. Patients are looking for these options and pushing these options. If demand's there, investments are going to be there. So medical device companies now want to have or now more inclined to invest in those arenas. Let's take peripheral nerve stimulation, for example. That's a great one because we've been doing it since the 1960s. So why is it more acceptable now? It's because technology has moved it into the arena of very safe. Whereas before, it was safe, but it still came with a lot of complications and problems because it was more of a surgical approach. Whereas we've moved more to a percutaneous approach, which risks go down, effectiveness goes up, medication dependency goes down. Now you're starting to move in the right direction in terms of patient demand, what they're looking for.
To me, it's pretty fascinating as you see, throughout our network, just a lot of great patient outcomes. You see physicians really moving in that direction, patients demanding. But one of the things that the challenge is that payers are not keeping pace, and they're not staying up with the changes in interventional pain management to make sure that these type of therapies are reimbursed. Any thoughts on where you feel that's heading?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got this explosive change. You have the payers now looking at all this explosive change, right? Coding language and et cetera, right, are being introduced. It's creating this whole dynamic of push and pull. We're fighting for patients. Hey, let's hurry up. We need this access. Our patient population is getting older. Baby boomers are turning 65 every day, every 6 seconds. In fact, someone's turning 65. By 2031, we have our last baby boomers turning 65. So we're gonna have more patients that are gonna fall in that camp of more comorbidities. That's going to translate into more needs in terms of healthcare, which is now driving us to perform these minimally invasive options. They're moving patients away from medications as you're getting older. Totally makes sense, right? You don't want a bunch of medications when you're 70 years old. Creates a lot of problems for the healthcare system and the patients. So really this drive to push away, insurance companies really trying to learn how we're adopting these and is there empirical evidence to support it because it's moving so fast. So I understand the push and pull. So it's going to be that way for some time. And you can see it also in the interest in the field overall, right? You're seeing less and less interest in the field, unfortunately, right now, because of a lot of this. We're in the gray area, but we're coming out of the gray area. It's becoming more and more defined. But again, anytime you have change, you've got a lot of different up and down kind of trajectory. It's not like this. It usually goes like this, and then it steadily starts moving up as you start getting all the data that we're looking for, especially patient outcome data, which we're seeing all over the place.
Yeah, makes sense. You actually know your generations. I'm actually in the last year of the boomers, so I'm that person you were talking about the last year.
There you go. There you go. See, we got to take care of guys like you, Mike.
That's right. That's right. And you have, Bobby. So thank you. Kind of shifting again to kind of how things are moving in there. One of the things that you and I have actually talked about before, and with other positions, is physician burnout. Even with fewer people maybe getting into pain management, the challenges of the payer hurdles, the documentation, the peer-to-peers, medical necessity, all of these challenges that are outside of, my daughter's a medical student right now. She's not learning that. Sure. They're coming in, they're getting just smacked with these realities. Can you talk a little bit about physician burnout and maybe some remedies you see for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, physician burnout is very complex. What we're finding, the data that's come out now, it's like 1 out of every 2, are burned out. 1 out of every 5 physicians looking to leave the field of medicine, and 1 out of every 3 are looking to reduce their patient facing part of the practice, either moving to more administrative or completely moving out. And this really stems from what you're talking about: reimbursement pressures, high regulatory scrutiny. You got administrative overload. That's another big one. Dependencies on getting patients to get on a schedule. There's more and more requirements, more steps that are required. All of those lead to unnecessary burdens, really, in terms of getting patients to get the care that they need. And so that really puts pressures on the physician and the providers that are out there, creating unnecessary headaches. It's hard enough to treat these patients. A lot of them are end-stage pain conditions. They're desperate. Many of them are on their way to disability, or they're already there. And so you add the administrative part on already a very burdensome patient population, it can create a lot of tension and problems for the physician. Absolutely.
What do you think? Because these pressures aren't going away, at least anytime soon. What are some of the solutions, and what are you working on that maybe can take some of these burdens off of physicians and make their lives easier?
Yeah, this is a great point, Mike, because I think DxTx is really, really honed in and focused on this, which is, and what I love about the network and the organization is that it's not just about pulling physicians, making creating a bigger voice. It's more about understanding where we're headed and what we need in order to keep physicians really excited to continue working within the field. And so those are going to be things. This may lead to our AI discussions, in fact. So it's a weird timing, right? We have this new technology in AI. It's not really new. It's just come to fruition now where it's more impactful than ever before. And we're seeing the true benefits. And so when you look at things like administrative burden, we get excited because, okay, hey, if we now have a tool that can help us with some of this administrative burden, that might lead to less burnout on the administrative side. For example, if we're inputting something for auth, more likely than not, that auth process is more streamlined, less headache. We don't have to get on the phone again and spend 2 weeks out of our year, dealing with auth issues. That will lead to less burnout, right? Using these tools to help us minimize that administrative burden. Huge. Another big one, in my opinion, is because of the dynamics in healthcare today and the way it works financially, we have to see more patients in less amount of time. That can also lead to burnout. Seeing a lot of patients, being able to perform, write the notes correctly, and also the administrative drag with that, ensuring that we're following the right algorithms and the coverage determinants that the insurance companies require. That's another way that AI can help. And another interest of mine, leading Aspen's department, is to bring all of this together to make sense for our stakeholders. Because so much is happening, so many moving parts, so many great companies are coming on board that are here to help what I call healthcare, this big inflationary problem we have in healthcare. This is a great arena to jump in and use tools like AI, right, to help streamline.
Congratulations on your appointment to lead Aspen's AI initiative on a national level. Always makes us proud when one of our affiliate physicians, one of our partner physicians, gets that type of recognition. So congrats on that. I attend all of the conferences, Aspen, ASIP, NANS, Becker's, you name it. And one of the things I've seen just dramatically shift in the last, it seems like every quarter, every year, are more and more AI companies. They're getting into, contact center, a lot of RCM stuff, AI scribing, and we're looking at platforms but it starts getting confusing. They all have really good pitches. The sales pitch has gotten really, really tight, but I don't know that the execution of that. So having, people like you on the forefront to help us with that is great. Can you talk us through a little bit of what is your role with Aspen there? What led to you, and talk a little bit about Anchor Healthcare, which I think is fascinating. And Sure. We're starting to roll that out through the DxTx network.
Absolutely. Yeah. I went to Tim Deere, who runs Aspen. It's in Dawood Saeed. And we discussed this. We said, look, the future of healthcare really is moving quickly into this whole technological front, especially with the fast moving AI world that we're living in today. And we need to be able to organize this for stakeholders. As you have clearly mentioned, it's confusing to you. Imagine what it's like for everyone out there trying to make sense of what tools are best for us to use. And even different specialties are going to have different focuses as well, in terms of what type of tools they're going to use to lower those administrative burdens, lower cost. That's another big area, right? Cost. The stakeholders at Aspen are worried about this. Many of them are in private practice. Even the academic physicians have to start thinking about cost as well. And cost is a big arena where AI could have a huge influence on. Mostly in that administrative front where the technology is already there. There's arenas where it's already there, where you can deploy today, that are going to make an enormous impact. So I brought that up in terms of our discussion site. Okay, where do we want to be? Where do we want to position Aspen? And all three of us said, hey, this is this is the appropriate time to start organizing this. Let's run with it. Let's build a department, not necessarily a division, department, bring a talent pool in, because we've got enormous talent pool at ASPN as well, and beyond, and make one of the strongest teams possible that can answer a lot of these questions, right? And so we're going to start deploying programs that are going to be specifically designed to bring AI to the forefront for all the stakeholders. So this includes sponsors, whether they're industry sponsors or they're AI-backed companies, coming together to create solutions for the various stakeholders.
How about just with what you see specifically with what Anchor is doing and how that is helping patients and practices?
Yeah, I mean, well, as a practicing physician, I deal with patients all day, every day. And because of all the different interventions, it becomes very challenging to truly obtain proper informed consent as well, right? So you have to explain therapies, diagnoses, and then you have to explain options. And I find it very, very challenging to educate patients properly within the time period and get all your other duties done.
Yeah.
Hence where Anchor came about. We thought, how do we effectively educate patients at scale? And once they're educated, because we know the medical literacy rate is very low. That means 1 out of every 4 really understand what you're saying, only 25%. So if we're able to, and we know visual educational tools are usually way more effective, i.e. videos. Yeah. So if we can add the likeness of the providers that are communicating with patients on a day-to-day basis, and we're communicating educational content to them in a likable way, meaning 2 minutes, 8th grade level, then they're able to retain that information. They're able to retain that information. They're going to likely be more compliant. So now you're going to see more compliant care. Burden goes down on the provider. Now you feel like you've explained all that you need to explain. And it also saved you time. So we're seeing it saved you time in the room. Patients are more satisfied. They know exactly where they're headed because you can nicely organize their pathway in terms of educational content. And then you've spent probably a fraction of that time in the room with them. Mm-hmm. So now that's like a trifecta, right? So you're impacting all kinds of things. You're impacting burden. You're impacting the educational problem that we have. No matter how good I am about educating a patient, if I don't have the time and I can't get through, what's a primary cell battery in spinal cord stimulation versus a non-primary cell battery? What's the difference? Well, we might forget to include that. That might be something that gets missed because we have 500 other things that we have to include. Well, this ensures that we're capturing majority of that for the patients. Yeah.
I think it's really cool. I've seen the avatars. It's very, very informative. As far as like the patient education tool like Anchor, I see that's really progressing quickly. It looks pretty solid. Some of the other tools like, I don't know specifically, some of the RCM tools or the scribe tools or the contact center tools. What I've seen in some beta tests, it hasn't been not fully there yet. I think they're getting there. As far as having these types of AI tools fully integrated, function at a high level, really taking burden off the practices and the physicians, how far away do you guess that we are from having these tools really ready and people kind of like the cream coming to the top? There's so many people in the same spaces. It's hard to say, okay, who's ahead of who and being able to get these tools ready for everybody.
Yeah, I think because of the fast moving nature of it, you're going to have these various glitches, right? Where they're experimenting right now. Hey, here's what we think it can do. Now you're going out and testing it. You're seeing it's not fully there because of hallucinations, whatever else is occurring in the AI world. It's still a problem, but I think it's going to get solved fairly quickly. Depending on who you believe, if AI is accelerating at the pace we think it is, where it's starting to move toward artificial general intelligence and then maybe super intelligence. And some people are predicting that's as close as, 2030. It's right around the corner. If that's truly the case, then you're going to see exponential changes. Like every 3 months, for example, that hallucination problem that was there before is likely going to get solved. So I think we're moving very quick. I don't think it's a gimmick. I don't think it's a huge, some people think there might be an AI bubble due to the investments. I don't think so. I think we're headed toward AI tools being able to actually research themselves and change themselves to improve without any human interaction. And that's occurring today. So how far are we? I don't think we're very far. I think DxTx is thinking about it the right way because they're testing various tools, finding out the solutions that are going to work today, right? To lower the administrative headaches, the burnout factor for all the providers. That's a huge focus for DxTx. And so going through that process, you're going to eventually figure out tools and systems that are going to really work for majority. It's not going to be 100%, but even if it's 50%, I mean, that's way better than what it was just a few years ago, how difficult it is really to work within healthcare with all the bureaucracy and regulatory scrutiny.
Yeah, the speed amazes me. I was talking to a CEO of an AI company just in the last couple of weeks, and he said that they're sending out and they're updating and upgrading like every 2 weeks with their product. Yeah. I mean, it's just like continuous. Very, very impressive. And there's a lot of money behind these companies. So, I don't know if there will be a bubble as far as, it just kind of goes away, but certain companies are going to definitely be eliminated through this, if they don't keep up. Super interesting. And I can't wait to see how this progresses. Kind of on a final note. So you're actively involved with, I know you travel the country training and speaking, very, very focused on learning and teaching others about advanced procedures, involved with AI and AI with ASPN, as well as, being a full-time physician with Colorado Pain Care. That's a lot. And I know you're very, very busy, high energy, very busy guy. When you're not doing all that, how does Bobby Moghim kind of refill the cup? What do you do to, get that energy back and enjoy some of that non-work time or non-innovative time?
Well, thanks for noticing, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I kind of pride myself on, gunner mentality, right? You're focused, you're working hard. I've always been that way. So it's kind of in my characteristic by itself. But, I'm a bass player. I play music. I have 3 kids. They're all 16, 14, and 12. So they're at that age. So any free time I have is mostly with them. And as you mentioned before, I was an ex-soccer player. I've got one of my kids kind of on that track. So spending a lot of time on the training front. And then playing music. My son's a drummer. He's starting a band. I've played in bands, and I'm constantly working on my bass playing abilities. It's almost like a fidget stick, like if you want, you just pick up the instrument. It's your like little device that gets your mind off of things. So I definitely use that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I've seen some pictures of you jamming with the band and stuff. So it's really cool. So I'm glad you brought that up. Well, Bobby, thank you for joining us. Very fascinating story, very fascinating career and what you're doing going forward. And we're very, very blessed to have you part of DxTx. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.